The Lighthouse at Heceta Head. To find the lighthouse at Heceta Head, you first have to find Oregon, then find Florence, and drive north 13 miles along Highway 101. It's a wonderful scenic route, and here it comes. "13 miles north of Florence and 13 miles south of Yachats, Heceta Head Lighthouse was built in 1894. It is a 56-foot tall lighthouse with a beam that shines 21 miles out to sea. Set in the deep greenery and forest primeval of Oregon proper, Heceta Head Lighthouse is a lovely day trip. The sound of gulls and waves breaking on the stones, sea lions, sometimes whales. You can find it all at Heceta Head Lighthouse. The lighthouse keeper's cottage, which is now a bed and breakfast, is reportedly haunted, but I really can't say that one way or the other, having never been inside. We'll leave that for a future program. Once you get to the park, you park and lock your car, and you walk up the half-mile trail to the Heceta Head Lighthouse keeper's house. Then further on up the trail until you reach the lighthouse itself. The park and the walk are dog-friendly, but of course dogs cannot be brought into the keeper's house or the lighthouse proper. As you can see, we went to Heceta Head Lighthouse on a typical summer day in Oregon. It's raining and cool. But it was the perfect time. It was comfortable and it was a fine walk. The lighthouse itself is a sturdy, fine structure built in the utilitarian style. From the mounted telescope, you can see caves, waves, and sea lions.
This is the workroom of the lighthouse. The lighthouse keeper and his two assistants used this room to do cleanup and do their night watch. One of the things they could do was look out this window and watch the lighthouse beam go by. That's what helped them keep an eye on that and make sure it was still running in case anything happened. In this room, they had a book box. Book box set there on the table. It's pretty good size, and if you look in the oil house right outside this room, you'll see it. It's there on the one corner dresser. They would start that box down the coast. As the ship went by, he would pick it up, he would bring it to the next lighthouse and drop one off for them. And then he'd pick one up here, dropping theirs off, and take it up to the next lighthouse. So the book boxes revolved, and then they would get new books put in them when they were down at the bottom. And this was their entertainment, because obviously they had no TV, no iPads, no cell phones, and none of those cool things we have today. They just had their box of books. And so that's what they did when they worked at night, and they had time on their hands, and they wanted to stay awake. So this entire lighthouse was driven by kerosene, and that meant they had to keep it wiped down constantly. And there was an inspector who came through, and he literally wore white gloves, and he came along and he checked the walls, he checked the windowsills, he wiped the window down. If he found any residue on that white glove, they were in trouble. And if the lighthouse was left very dirty for some period of time, they lost their jobs. So that was very important. This is the weight room. If you'll look out over here, you'll see straight up, you'll see a circle up there where all the lines come together. That was a hole originally. The cable from the clockworks came down through there. It had a 200-pound weight on the end of it. And one of the jobs of the gentleman who was on the night duty was to go up there and wind that cable up so the weight was at the top, and the weight would drop very slowly and turn the gears in the gearbox, which would, the size increased, if you know anything about how gears work, until it engaged the large gear that's set under the lens, and that's what would turn the lens. That clockwork box was lost when they converted the lighthouse to electricity. They converted it in the early 30s, and no one knows what happened to the clockworks. I've seen pictures of it. It was so beautiful. It was all brass and just almost like a piece of art. And I know it is. They think probably that metal was so precious back then that it was melted down and it was used for another project. So, going up the stairs, these are the original iron steps that were made for the lighthouse when it was built. They are floating stairs, which means the individual stairs are not fastened to the wall of the lighthouse. The one on the bottom is attached to the floor, and the step on the top here is fastened to the landing. And then as you go up, they're fastened from the landing to the landing. So we will take our time going up because they do vibrate. And it was built to carry 3 people. And we must show 500 or 600 people through here in the course of the day in the summer. So only a few at a time, which is why we have to control the number of people on the tour. But we still have to be careful how we use the steps.
Thank you.
If you look at the width of the wall through this window, you will notice it looks very wide. We have a cylinder wall on the inside. We have a conical wall on the outside. And there is an airspace between the two of them. That's so that the lighthouse can breathe. At one time, they painted this wall. They thought they were preserving the brick. What they did was seal up the pores, and it caused the inside of the lighthouse to sweat. And water just ran down these walls and puddled at the bottom and the floor. It was a mess. So one of the things they did when they reviewed the architectural plans for the restoration was realize that they needed to take that off. So they did, and now you'll notice it's an even temperature in here. it doesn't feel damp, and the walls no longer sweat. So it's good to pay attention to what those old craftsmen did. They knew their job. This is the service wing. This is where they stage all of their tools, their cleaning supplies, and the oil cans. One of the jobs during the day was to get those oil cans filled up. They were pretty good size, and then those got carted up as part of the end of the day job and filled those reservoirs that fed the light. The light was 5 wicks, and they were not the way that we think of wicks today. They were circle wicks, and they were concentric from large to small to smaller, and if one of those rings went out, the other 4 rings supported it until the lighthouse keeper was able to get in there and make that ring. This is our last flight of steps. It's pretty narrow up here. Take your time. Inside the lantern in order to clean it, because there again it was kerosene driven, so they had to clean those lenses daily so that the light would not cloud over. They had to clean 2 people at a time because the light is fragile. So one person had to stand on the outside, the other person had to stand on the inside, and they had to use even pressure to clean every one of those prisms in the bullseye. Now, that lantern was turned off when they worked, so they could just walk through the hole for access and walk back out. However, today, the light runs 24 hours a day. So when the rangers need to get in there to change the light bulb, or still we need to dust, they have to simply walk through that hole when it goes by. So, a little trickier. You
gotta time it right.
So they still have to be very careful walking around inside that lens. If you look in the oil house when you go out, inside a glass top table, you'll see 2 rings that were broken because they were backed into, and the bullseye, and 2 of the rings fell out. The bullseye, thank goodness, was not broken, and a gentleman down the coast in Brandon, I believe, who had done glass work for NASA, was able to reverse engineer the chemistry in this glass and was able to manufacture 2 replacement rings. This is a first order Fresnel English lens. It's the only first order Fresnel English lens in the country. We are still operational. Did I tell you that downstairs? Okay. When we shut down for the restoration, we had to notify the Coast Guard. They notified the ships that this was now a dark spot on the coast. When we turned the lighthouse back on, we told them, and they told the ships. What happens is, of course, they use their GPS as their first source of navigational tool. But technology goes out. We have problems with it sometimes. So this lighthouse still functions as their backup. So they do keep it plotted on their charts, and they do look for us when they're out to sea. Any questions?
How far out to sea can it be seen?
Very good. When it was a kerosene lantern, it was 80,000 lumens, and it's shown 21 miles out into the ocean.
Wow.
Now it is a 2.5 million lumen light. Care to guess how far out it goes?
Like maybe 50?
75?
21.
I mean,
Do you know why that is?
No.
for the Earth.
Very good.
Oh.
Exactly.
I'm not going on Jeopardy anytime soon.
Any other questions?
When they first used kerosene, how messy did it really get? Because kerosene was considered the cleanest of the time.
But it wasn't very clean.
Yeah.
So it made a lot of soot, which is why they had to clean them
Are those the same gears that were used a long time back, the Turners?
up. Those are the original gears that were built to drive the lantern. The only thing that's different is the clockworks was in this box. And they removed it and they put the motor in and then the gearbox that goes with the motor that drives the lower gears that then engages the large gear.
As we descended from the light, I asked the tour guide about a hole I saw on the wall. She said that this hole had once housed a Smokey the Bear coin that was there when they built the lighthouse. They found the coin during the current restoration, and they have it in the museum. They are now considering what they're going to put back into the spot and re-brick as sort of a new time capsule after the restoration. The restoration itself was magnificent. The lighthouse is in wonderful shape. And if you go up there to Heceta Head, I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful experience.
Clear your screen, please.
You have successfully accomplished your task, Dr. Meacham. You've assembled an interrosseter, a feat of which few men are capable.